Jared Goff throws for 5 picks. Jordan Love throws picks. The game is close. And yet, when we look at them compared to those 3 teams after those games, we're like, they're not as good as them. The Texans have been an, at best, average football team for their entire existence. So you're not going to get a high-quality brand of football. The 2011 team before, and maybe 2012 too, those 2 teams were legitimately, in a lot of people's eyes, Super Bowl teams, potential Super Bowl teams. We know the Matt Schaub thing. He got hurt, and then he was just really the Matt Schaub in 2012. But 11, a lot of people thought that team had a shot. He got hurt. 2012, they fell apart down the stretch. Really, they started out great. They didn't finish 2012 very
Were they
well.
like 10-1 or something?
Yeah, they were
And
good.
They went like 12-4.
Yeah,
11-5.
Yeah.
Something.
Then the playoff disappointment seemed predictable at that point. So they just haven't been good enough. But to the Lions, have the Texans ever had as good of a team as this Lions team? Now the Lions are banged up. They're finding ways. The defense obviously gave up a lot of points, but have they ever been this good? Because the Lions look dominant. Their offense is great. The Texans' offense put up points with Schaub and the outside zone stuff with Arian Foster. And now we're just talking about over a decade ago, so it's hard to compare. But I can't disagree with him. And if you're talking about the more recent vintage, well, they've been awful for the better part of the last 5 or 6 years. The last couple of years, surprise last year, this team is more in the vibes of the Bill O'Brien era Texans. So I don't know how old Mike is, but if we're talking about AFC South football, look what the AFC South produces. Of course you're not going to get that level. Of course, if you're watching AFC South football, what happened last night is not what you're going to see. So, Mike, I don't think you're wrong.
Yeah, I think that watching last night's game, watching especially the Lions, but also the
Packers, yeah.
They lost by 3. So it's a pretty even matchup. That is what really hammers home more than watching the Texans on Sundays. Watching those 2 teams play, especially when they play each other. That's what tells you, there's actually a serious difference between the Texans definitely more than likely going to win the division and make the playoffs.
We say
host
this,
a playoff game, and then that's the difference between Super Bowl contenders.
But we say this, and the Texans could have beaten both those teams. Now, the Packer game, they benefited from Jordan Love doing the Jordan Love thing, throwing picks and stuff. But they were in that game. They had a lead, and they were leading the Lions. So while I don't disagree with Mike, anyone who's a Texan stan will say, excuse me, we were in both these ball games. In fact, you would say, particularly the Lions game, we should have won that one until we tricked off in the second half.
You got 5 picks from the quarterback, and you didn't
I
win.
know, which says I remember everything. I know, but if you are on the other side, you go, we played these 2 teams within a score. It was last-second stuff that cost us those games. So if you are a defender, if you are a defender of the Texans, you would say that.
But
the quality of the games weren't great.
Yeah.
Do the Texans drag you down into the mud? Is that what they do?
I was gonna say, like, I remember the week after the Packers game, everyone's like, the Texans played like crap in that game.
But they were in it.
Sure, congrats.
I'm not saying they played well, but if you're defending them, you're saying.
But those 2 teams played well against each other.
So that's what I'm saying. Are they like a Rockets where they drag you down into the mud? Is that what the Texans do? Their varying incompetence floats over to the other side, and that's why we get games like we get?
The thing is, the Texans play 1-score games with the Lions, with the Packers,
and
with
the
Jags,
and the Colts.
the Titans.
Yes, that's true. It's very true.
They just play 1-score games with everybody.
This is what
except the Vikings.
They raise up bad teams to their level to play these games, and they sink good teams to the level to play the same game.
But the thing is, the Packers and Lions, when they play bad teams, they put them in the dirt.
Yes, they bury them. Yes. While the Texans were fighting tooth and nail with a Mac Jones-led Jags team, what did the Lions do to the Jags?
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
That to me is like where you watch the Lions play, and especially the Lions. You watch the Lions play, and you're like, that's a real deal team.
It's
right
about
there.
the ceiling quite a bit. The Texans have a floor that somehow can lower levels of good teams and raise the levels of bad teams. The Lions' ceiling is one the Texans have not exhibited, certainly not week after week, and sometimes it can't even get from one half to the other.
And it's more than just like the players on the team too. It's like the coaching, the decision making. Like
yes.
you can agree or disagree with the Dan Campbell fourth down decisions, which the last one I was not down with. I was like, just kick the field goal, dude.
Yeah.
But kick the field goal and try to play defense.
But I thought he was going for it as soon as that situation occurred. He's going for it. When they didn't get it on 3rd and inches, he's going for it.
It was more like, for me, it was like watching a horror movie where I was like, don't do it, and then they ended up.
And just like in a horror movie, the woman running away from the killer falls down. Yeah. Jared Goff fell down, but in this case, they found a way to survive.
Yeah, but you watch like just how, I don't know, they just are cohesive in a way that the Texans just are never cohesive. They never play a clean 100% top-down game, which the Lions didn't really even do. But they like know who they are. They know what they want to do on 4th and short. They know what they want to do. They know that they want to go for it on 2nd and 7. They know that if they don't pick it up, they're going to run the ball on 3rd down.
There's no guessing.
So they can go on 4th.
Like we know if we're in a position where it's 4th and 1.5, we're doing this.
Yeah.
And there isn't they got to call a timeout because they
talk it over.
Or they're up there, they can't get a play, so they got to call a timeout because they weren't exactly ready. None of that happens.
Yeah.
So, yes, there's a difference in how that team plays and how the best teams play. It just so happens that the Texans have been able to compete with some of the best teams in football. They beat the Bills in another game where they were good in the first half and not good in the second half. They dragged Josh Allen down into the mud. One of his worst game of the season. Jared Goff throws for 5 picks. Jordan Love throws picks. The game is closed. And yet, when we look at them compared to those 3 teams after those games, we're like, they're not as good as them.
Maybe you are right. Maybe they just – I don't know. I can't think of other teams in that same vein in football where, yeah, they really do just junk it up against everybody. And that's how they just drag teams down to their level, where the Texans play an ugly game, but they also force the other team to play an ugly game, really for weird reasons. Like, it's not like it's always one thing where they get a million. I mean, they got a million sacks on Will Levis. He won. But they get a million sacks on you, or they turn the ball over. They force you to throw 5 interceptions, which I don't know how much forcing they were doing of Jared Goff. Jared Goff was,
at least on that night,
willingly to throwing some
he
of
was
those
happy
interceptions.
too, yes.
But I don't know. Maybe it's just it's the way that they play. It's the way the Texans play, where you're like, this is not going to work in real deal.
Having your
games.
quarterback always in 3rd and long, having to make a play, it feels like it feels very unsustainable, and it's been that way all year. And the record would tell you, being 8-5 in the AFC South, despite being 4-1 in the division, you look at how those games have gone. Yeah. I laid it out.
Have they covered the spread in any of them?
I don't know that. I know were they underdogs against the Lions? They might have been, so that might be one.
Yeah,
but
they were. They're definitely underdogs.
But they're only a +7. They're 4-1 in the AFC South, and they're a +7 point differential. That's the type of things we're talking about. A bad division, you are dominating it with the wins and losses, but the games themselves show you that you are more than capable of losing all of them, and you happen to lose one very recently.